Hi, welcome to Give Your Walls Some Soul. I'm Shannon Grissom. Last time on our show, we painted a huge red hat. And normally I get it done in time for the next shoot, but I didn't. But it's really, really close to being done. It was interesting, the evolution of the hat between the last show and this show. It had a turquoise shadow, it had a yellow background, and when all was said and done, I went down to what just made it clean and kept it simple. It really is just about there. The only thing I need to do is tidy up the rawhide, but I wanted you guys to get an idea of where it went between now and the last show. It's interesting. I just got back from a trip from New York, and here I'm painting this huge hat. I met out of all the people that I met when I was in New York, I met several people from Dallas, and my paintings seem to have a Western theme. Last time I came back from New York, I was painting everything from Times Square. But today what we're going to do is a set of chaps. And these were from a cowboy called Bob Calhoune. Mr. Calhoune was just an incredible artist and an even more incredible cowboy. And so today we're going to paint his chaps. So where do you start in the middle of this? I don't use black a lot, but today I'm covering the whole background with black. That's just going to be a way of letting these things totally pop out. It's also a good way when you start in the background like this and you just start putting paint down of a nice way of transitioning into the painting. I picked this large format. This is, well shoot, it's a little bit larger than life. Yeah, he was not that tall, but I like to make everything that I paint larger than life. You know, when you get this close to the canvas, you really become intimate with the subject and you really get to know it well. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to outline almost in black. And this will set the pace for the rest of the painting. If you ever saw the show where I did the huge pears, and you do something this big in an hour, it's got a lot more expression than if you were just piddling with it. So I'm scrubbing it in. I'm using a lot of medium. You know, I had never been on a horse except for those little ponies in a ring until I met Mr. Calhoune. And still, you can't really call it riding. He taught everybody to ride bareback. And I still didn't do that well. Basically what they did was they got me up on the horse, and he kind of led me around the ring for a while. And that was the extent of it. I hadn't been back to the ranch before he passed. But he taught all of his children. He just threw them up there bareback, and that's how they got started. This man was an incredible artist. He painted, he carved. God, he did these walking sticks that, and I remember, looking at this one walking stick that he had made. And he had carved it from, and I don't know if it was from eucalyptus or what he carved it from. So I thought, well, I can make one of those. I really would like to make one of those. So he gives me this branch, and I just start stripping off some of the wood. And before I got maybe an inch stripped off, I decided this made me tired. It wasn't fun anymore. I wanted to get down to the carving part. I mean, for me, it was like get a chainsaw and start stripping this stuff off. He had the most incredible patience, and really, what would emerge from his sticks were just beautiful, beautiful works of art. But it didn't matter what medium. Here was a man who worked the land, worked with animals, and he could do any type of art form that you could throw at him. He tried it all. He was good at it all. And you'll notice the brand on the chaps when I get to paint that it's from the 3 C's, the Calhoune Cattle Company, from his ranch. See, we're getting some energy in this background. This is good. I thought about painting it first and then going over it and glazing it when we came back to do the show. But I really wanted you to see how I started the whole thing. Okay, when you work on something this big and you don't have a step stool, you got to just basically get down dirty with it, down on the floor. And I choose this time, right, to run out of paint. You know, people talk about, well, you've got to have tall ceilings to work on big canvases. And you have to have this and you have to have that. And no, you don't have to have tall ceilings. You have to have a big canvas. So you can take it in the garage, you can work on it outside, you can work at it under the shed or wherever it takes if you want to get it done. But this one, you know, although it looks big, this fits in a standard house. And I've got some that are bigger. I'm going to be doing a huge Sargent-type portrait next week on a really, really large canvas. And so the only restrictions that I found is the ones that I make up for myself. If you want to paint big, you don't have to have a big house or big space. You just need to paint big. And I must say, though, transporting these things home from the chute can be tricky. And needless to say, my van is covered in paint. But then again, I bought the van based on whether it could haul the biggest painting that I do. When you use this much medium, it's good to have some ventilation. It's got some pretty good fumes. You don't notice it on a smaller painting as much, but on something with this surface, you really do. Well, that's an interesting shape, which is good. That's what we're looking for, is interesting shapes in the background. I know it can get a little boring watching me put down all this black. But that's how you start out and you set the tone for the painting, and it'll get exciting later. It'll start to look like something later. I thought about doing a dramatic, I mean, if you look at the reference photo, it's against wood. But you know how I like to make things pop. I mean, the show is Give Your Wall Some Soul, so it's not just how to make a painting look three-dimensional, but it's really to get the soul of the piece. And I felt like against a black background, these chaps would really pop. And I'd really be able to get inside of that. But every time I'd go over to my sister and brother-in-law's and I'd see these chaps, I was like, God, I've got to paint these. And you know, they don't even have any red in them. And I still had to paint them. They just touched my soul. And you know, I didn't even set up that still life, that reference photo. My brother-in-law, that's just how he has them hanging in the house. He's just naturally did a good job setting them up. Okay, I'm scribbling and making sure that this paint isn't all going in the same direction because I want that energy to show later. Okay. When you spend so much time working on something and really, really examining it and painting it and drawing it, you really get to know what a thing does. When you think about this leather and how the folds move, it's different than a fold in a cotton shirt. Stiffer. The shadows are different. Okay, got this background covered, sort of. Step back, take a look at that, look in my little magic mirror here. Sound like Miss Nancy or Miss Mary Ann. Yep, Okay, so that's an interesting shape. So when I was thinking about the composition of this, I didn't want it totally dead center, and I also wanted some of it off the page so that the hook that it's hanging from is actually way up here. So I've got these shapes are not the same. That would be boring. And so there's, that looks good there. So it took me, I would say, as far as prep time, about an hour to figure out, maybe a half hour, to figure out exactly where I wanted the composition, and then yet another hour or so to get it on the canvas. So that's how much prep time it took before I ever got here. I had the long and narrow format in my head from the day that I saw it. I knew I was going to I bought these canvases thinking that I was going to paint this. Okay, so now we get down to something that's more fun that starts to look like something, which is usually everybody's favorite part. I'm going to start with I'm going to clean my palette off a little bit so I have some room. I'm just picking up the paint and moving it over. Mr. Calhoune, we had some talks about, he loved to paint. He painted wet on wet, everything, and he would have had everything done in one sitting. And it's a wonderful way to paint. I know a lot of good painters who do that. It's just really a personal preference. I think a really nice thing about painting everything in one session. In fact, I had somebody email me that just saw the last show, and they were talking about when you paint in one session, how you have that energy from that session all in one painting and it's not divided. And that's a really important point. Like today I'm really high energy, so this painting is going to reflect that. I go in and touch it up the next day, I might be a little mellower, and it'll have that combination. So it's got its good points definitely for doing it all at once. All right, so how am I going to do that shadow color in there? Well, the photograph really doesn't do the color justice, so I'm remembering what I saw when I was there. I'm going to take some yellow ochre, and maybe I'm going to need more than that. Wipe my knife clean, and I'm going to add some Carbazole violet. Why the violet? Because, well, you know I like purple, but that's not why. It's opposite on the color wheel. So if I add this to the yellow ochre, it'll make a nice dark neutral, and they're not going to be fighting with each other. I'm going to need some more because that's just not dark enough. So I shouldn't be bashful with the violet. See what happens here. Oh, that's nice. Very rich color. Do I have enough room to pre-mix all my colors? No. Besides, that's boring. It really makes a lot of sense to do that, though. The left brain of me says, yes, let's pre-mix every single color so that we can see that it all looks good here before we ever put it down. But the artist in me says, nah, let's just paint. Let's just put it down. So that's what I'm going to do. The artist wins. Okay, so where's the shadow? I need some more medium. I've talked about this before. I shake it up because it does settle. And if you're like me, just remember, and I've done this before, remember to put the lid back on because I've had it all over the place while I'm shaking it up. Okay, so where is the dark? I'm going to just put in the basic darks first. I switched to a little. Okay, this brush is smaller compared to the last one, but it's really not that small. It's, God, what is this? This is a 12, and I think the other one was a 16. So my tiny brushes aren't that small. That's what happens when you paint big. Okay, so where are the shadows? Shadow goes under here, under the belt. And where else is it dark? Here. I want to put those in so I don't lose my place. Okay, the darkest dark is right here. And it kind of goes up. That might not even be dark enough, but that's okay. I don't want to judge this early. Okay, I'll tell you the struggle that goes through my head when I'm doing this. This whole side from here to here is basically in shadow. And the first thing that I see, there's two ways I could approach it. I can do the whole shadow in a dark color and then throw some light over the top of it. Or I could actually throw in some of those other variables now. You could do it either way. When you've only got an hour to paint something, I think it's better to just go ahead and throw the thing in and maybe clean it up later. I want to get the canvas covered. And I'm really tempted to add another color, but I'm not going to do that. Okay, that's a good shadow. Let's see, where else is it dark? I just want to put the basic ones in. I need to make a road map so that I don't get lost. I tend to get lost. Okay, right in here, that's dark. And I can always adjust that later. I'm going to go ahead and put the brand in. And I'm actually going to, what I call cheat, and usually I don't use black, but today we are. And so I'm going to go ahead and just put that in. I'm going to put it in a darker color than I normally do. You go ahead and use the black, and then later I'll glaze over it with a lighter color. Kind of like doing some of the more, well, I'll give you an idea. When I paint early in the morning, I start off, I have my first cup of coffee and I look at the canvas and I go from there. So, and I know coffee's not that great for you, but I know that my very detailed things are done around the first cup of coffee, because once I start having several, you're not going to be as steady. So a good way, what happens when I'm painting in this shoot, when I'm doing it on TV or whether I'm doing it at home, is you get into alpha state. And by that I mean your left brain goes away, you're totally in right brain, and you're not paying attention and you're just creating. And so sometimes when we're in the middle of the show and you're not hearing me talking, it's because I'm gone. I have checked out. And so if I start painting things that are more technical early on, later when I get slap happy and I'm in the zone, I won't screw up the painting. So that's the logic about why I'm doing the brand now. There are different considerations that you have when you're doing it at home and when you're doing it on TV. And some of them are the same. I know where my weaknesses are, and I work to. There are some things that I can't change about myself, and so knowing that, I work around that. Now, there are other people who paint differently who would be consistently careful through the entire process. God, that's wonderful. I wish I could do that. Okay, I got the basic brand in. I'm going to put in the light around the buckle next, because that's something that I would cover up later and be sorry if I didn't get it in. That will be just some white with a little bit of cad yellow deep, maybe a little bit of Indian yellow just for some brightness. And when I first put it down, it won't show up because it's going to be white on white, but when I put the surrounding colors in, it will. Everybody, we talked about this before, or at least I have, everybody is affected by their neighbors. Okay, I'll just put this buckle in a little bit wider than it really is. And I'm going to go ahead and outline this in probably in a violet. That's a nice neutral. You know, there's controversy or in terminology as far as, oh my God, you're outlining something, that's not fine art, or you're doing this or you're doing that. Basically, however you get the job done, I don't care what you call it. Now this is starting to look like something. I want to make a nice ochre for that color. See, now I was tempted to go in and just, did you see that stroke I made just here and make that shadow just a little bit darker there? Now it's really not good to go playing and start doing these details before you have the whole canvas covered. We don't have that kind of time today, so I need to get going. I want to make some of that rich red. See, there's red in here somewhere. Rich, rich, rich red. Body color of the chaps. Let's see, so I'm taking some yellow ochre. I was tempted to use some of that mix, but I'm going to grab some straight red and add that. Oh, that's yummy. That's 49er red. Yeah. That's not a real color. That's a color I made up. Or at least not a real name for the color. Okay, so sometimes you really shouldn't fall in love with a color if it's not the right one for where you want to put it down, but I did. So since that happened, I'm going to see if there's a place I can use it, because I just like it. And it is, if you look at the palette, it is compatible with its neighbor that's already on the canvas, so I know they're going to work together. I didn't make very much paint, but that's okay. I'm going to have to mix some more, but that's all right. It'll add interest. Grabbing yet another brush. Okay, let's see. This, I think, would be a good fit for maybe the other side of these chaps. We'll try that. Yeah, that looks good. You'll notice the reference photo has saddle horn, lots of other things in there that I'm not painting. And it's just one of those cases where it made me tired to put all that other stuff in there. Oh, that's a gorgeous color. I like it when that happens. Let's see, is that going to work up here? I'm asking the canvas, you know, it's going to tell me whether it's going to work or not. Yeah, I think so. All right, now we're getting the other brush out. When I start getting the two brushes, that's when I start getting in the zone. putting in a little more shadow so that that'll make sense. And I think that you would think it would be hard to lose your place on something this simple, but it's not. It goes all over the place. Okay, now this shadow isn't as, I mean, I'm tempted to throw in the same color, but it's not. It's lighter, it's a little redder. So I'm going to just, so you know, I had these nice clean mixes on my palette, and I would mix everything, you know, one by one and really take great care. But now we're getting the other brush out, and we're just going to go get some red. Red fixes everything. Oh, that's pretty. It might be a little too red, but I like it. Okay. Oh, that was nice. Very nice. Mix that with a little bit of the dark shadow color that we put down. That's nice. It adds some variation. Yeah, I'm putting the basic body color down, and then I'm going to throw stuff in. You know, okay, this is what I decided to do. I changed my mind halfway through there. I'm going to throw in the big spots, which is really how my teacher Michael taught me to paint. Was you throw in the big spots and then you go do the details. And I was struggling with that, whether I really wanted to do that the whole time, but that's where I'm going. Michael was a really good teacher. He is a really good teacher. I still hear him in my head when I'm painting. Again, I'm going to come down to where the brand is and get that done too before I start going crazy, because you know I start scribbling with my strokes. So when you're painting, a good thing to think about is what kind of painter are you? Are you considerate in everything that you do, or do you have to work at that part? And again, neither one is bad. It's just something to be conscious of. When I'm painting, it hurts my soul if I have to be too tidy all the way through the process. That's why I didn't want to paint the rest of the if I do the saddle and the horn and the rope and all the other stuff that goes with it, that would be a separate painting, big, so that I don't have to futz with it. I will blend that later. Again, I just want to get this covered. I am going to put that grommet in too, because that's an important part of this, making this look like what it is. Okay, that's going to work. I picked up some black that I didn't mean to pick up, so I'm just blending it in. These things will happen when you're painting. You pick up a color you didn't intend to. Sometimes you can work with it and blend it in. Sometimes you just have to let it go and wait till it dries. When it's really ugly and you have to let it go till it dries. Sometimes that's really hard because I don't want to sit there and look at it till it does. You know, I want it to be fixed, but you just have to be patient. I'm not a, or I didn't used to be a patient person. I've developed a lot of patience from painting. Well, I've gotten better. Okay, I'm going to put that grommet in. So I'm getting really most of the detail done before I don't feel like it. So what did I do? I just grabbed some white, a little bit of ultramarine blue, making a nice neutral gray. With the ultramarine blue, I'll grab a little bit of Cad Red Light, just a touch. That's going to gray it down. All my grays have red in them. Oh, that's pretty. And how does that look against these guys? Oh, that's a nice neutral. Neutrals exist so that the other colors can sing. If they're competing, then they're not really neutrals. Okay, so let's see, this would be the lighter area. And that had purple on the brush. That wasn't good. I just messed up that nice little mix, but that's okay. That'll just be the darker area. So I'm going to put in that edge of the grommet there. And I'll just add fresh mix some yellow for that area there. It did have a little highlight thing. So I'll just literally blob some yellow there, just so that it's in the right place. That's enough to suggest that that's what's going on right there. I can grab a little yellow ochre, throw in part of the rawhide down below, and at least be done with that part of the detail. Now, I don't like having to paint around things. If you look at the hat, when I was painting that, and you look at the shadow, it was really a pain because I kept changing when I was home in the studio, I kept changing the shadow color. It was turquoise, it was bright blue, it was all these different colors. And every time you did, you had to paint over the rawhide. You know, I'd put in the nice little rawhide ties, and you'd have to paint over them because if you just go up to them and stop, it looks like you just went up to them and stopped, and it looks terrible. So you basically have to paint over them and put the rawhide back on top. So my last step, what's not done with this painting because I changed it so many times, is that I have to go in and tidy up that rawhide. Now, along those same lines with doing that on the hat, doing it also on these chaps, I'll have to go in and tidy this stuff up later, but right now, because you don't want it to look like it just butts up to it and runs away. We can't have chicken strokes. And you know what, there's got to be some more chap there, even though I didn't see that in the picture, or if I didn't draw it right. Yeah, you really can't see from there. It doesn't make any sense, so things have to make some sense. So I'm putting that up here. I also didn't want this compositionally to run off the edge of the canvas, so I extended that a little bit that way. All right, that's enough of that. I can clean that up later. Okay. Now, in order for this to have some sort of form, I'm going to have to make a lighter. I might take some straight yellow ochre, just right out of the tube. Yeah. I'm kneading these tubes first because it's a brand new tube, and so the oil tends to set, and if you don't knead them, you pour out oil first before you get your paint. That was good. And you can tell that I've screwed up and, and didn't need it first because all the oil is on the side of the tube. You know, there's things that I know how to do and still mess up once in a while. Okay, gonna get a different brush. I think I'm gonna get a bright this time. Going straight into the yellow ochre, and this is lighter here. It's not quite the color that I want, but that's okay. I'll put this down, I'll put the other stuff on the top. Actually, the more medium I put in here, yeah, the more medium I put in, I actually like a little bit lighter. I'm going to blend that color that I just had out, that mixture that I did, with the yellow ochre. And somewhere in between there is the color I was trying to get. I can tell that this is definitely going to be one where you're going to glaze a lot later just to get the right effect, to get that feel of leather. Okay, I'm standing back looking in the mirror to see if that's starting to pop. It is. It'd be great to have an easel that you just press a button and the whole thing raised and lowered depending on where you were. Of course, then you would need tall ceilings then. That's kind of a nice mixture. I may add some of that yellow ochre over to the other side. Okay, what does it do over here? I keep looking to see what does it do. I will blend this and make it tidy later, but my main concern right now is to get the canvas covered. Okay, this needs to be browner. So I'm going to neutralize this a little bit. I could add more violet, but that's going to make it closer to what it was before. I'm actually, ooh, yuck. I added some, I don't like that. I added some ultramarine blue. Actually, let's see how that does. Nah. Added some ultramarine blue to see if that would gray it down. And it did make it a neutral, but it was not the neutral I was looking for. Maybe if I add it to this mixture. Okay, that did work. Because that bit at the top is not the same color. Different spot of leather there. Let's see, I'm just going to slap a little bit on there with a knife and see if I like that. Yeah, it's not bad. Maybe when I scrub it in, it'll work. Yet another brush. I just ordered a bunch of new brushes. I've been using canvases that are really textured, and it just eats up your brushes. Okay, so we have some dark hair. This is really looks like one of my abstracts as far as the shape. Oh, that turned into a nice color. Sometimes you don't know until you hit the canvas where it's going to go. Okay, this needs to come down. You know, the part of what I'm doing too is I continue to draw as I'm putting the paint down and adjust to where I was or where I thought I was going. Okay, this brush is too big for this little area. I'm taking a flat because this is one of those cases where you do want a little more control, even though it's early on in the process. Need a little more medium so that this will flow better. I also, since there's some highlights there, I should have put some white blobs in like we talked about earlier before I cover them up. When it's this wet and you got this, you just have to put it down and leave it and not play with it, which is sometimes hard. Okay, there's some dark there. I'm going to actually take the time to look at my mirror to see where I'm at. Yeah, when you're really close up on something, it's just, it's hard to tell where you are. That's why it's good to, you know, if you don't use a mirror, go ahead and, you know, you need to step back from your work so that you can see whether it's starting to work. Okay, this was kind of that color. Okay, what do we have going on here? It's a little bit lighter. And I'm just going to start slapping the paint on to get this covered down here. I can tell I'm getting quiet. I'm getting in the zone. What is going on in her head? Well, it's just starting to get some texture and look like something. And basically, what I need to do is step back instead of and just see. Okay, where am I going with this? All right, it's starting to take on some form. But it's really kind of early in the painting process as far as, you know, where it needs to go. But I like the freshness of it. I like the color. So we're in good shape. I could play with these shadows a little bit. What's this doing? This is like a little part of a strap or something. Yeah, I think it's some sort of strap. When you think about it and you just see them out of context, they're an unusual shape anyway. So people who had never seen them before, you could paint them just like the picture, and people would say, "Well, what are you painting? What is that?" Okay. I might finesse the shadow a little bit now. Okay, so now that I've got the basics plugged in, I can start playing with it to make it look like what it needs to look like. It's got some really, I like it kind of in its rough state. It's really, really raw, but it's got that edge to it that I wanted. So now I will start playing with shadow. And I might add a little bit of light to the background. I'll do that later. We don't have that kind of time. Okay, so what are we doing with the shadow? We're going to lighten that up a little bit. Blend this with, oh, what a beautiful red. Ah! I got lucky. I wish I could say I totally planned that, but I didn't plan that. I really got lucky with that red. This is one of those, when this happens and I'm home in the studio, I just run around going, thank you, God, for giving me that red. Oh, that's nice. Because if you look at leather, it really does have a lot of different color in it. It's just not the same thing all over the place. I think normally what I would do if I was home in the studio, I would pick this puppy up and turn it on its side and lift the canvas up and totally readjust it so that I could get a different perspective on it and I could really kind of clean up the bottom of it. But you know what? It's wet and it's big and I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to lift it up slightly so that I can paint the bottom. And I got to tell you, when I'm doing this at home, I forget that I've got it up here and half the time I knock it off. But I just want to address the parts that are on the bottom. Take care of this shape here. As a first statement, I'm really happy with the progress here. Basically, the first statement is the first blocking in of color, the first attempt at the canvas. So the fact that this is working is good. I'm going to throw in the darks. I am going to put in that purple that I was talking about in the shadow. And I will be a little more careful about it. Right now they're fairly flat. When they're done, I definitely want them to have form. Did a painting of Mr. Calhoune. He had gone on this trail ride and did a painting of him just out in the open with his horse. And God, you know, when you first start painting, I don't know about you guys, but when I first started painting, I'd do a bad painting, and then I'd do one that was okay, and then every once in a while I'd have one that was way beyond my skill level at that time. And I got really lucky with Mr. Calhoune. That painting is really cool, and it was way beyond where I was at the time. Okay, so what am I doing now with this shadow? I'm softening these edges. I'm lighter. I'm putting less pressure on the brush. in the place where I'm blending. I need to address this shadow here because that doesn't make sense at all. And I was worried about making it too dark, but I just need to put it in. Make a statement. Get off the fence. Okay. And this shape needs to be more defined. This is where you start fixing things. Not fixing, adjusting. If you're not done yet, how could it be broken? I still have to fight with my little inner critic. Okay, so in order for that to make sense, I need a little light over here. So this needs to be light. That's better. And that thread little area. Now I am not going to go in and put every stitch. I will suggest it later. But my thrust here, what's important to me is the color, the form, the composition. And when I'm done, I want the soul of these chaps, I want the soul of Mr. Calhoune to pop out. I want you to know that he lived in these puppies. I'm going right up into the background and just lightly touching that. Okay, now I'm getting back from it again so that I can see. That's really pretty. It's starting to come up with some good color combinations. When you get a painting like this, this is far from being complete. But when you get a painting like this that's got a really solid foundation, you almost can't mess it up. Now I have, but it's almost really hard to mess up when you get a really solid foundation like this. So spending the extra time to get it right in the beginning is important. Do I always do that? No. This needed to be darker. Okay. Yeah, when you get up close, it really just looks like a lot of scribbles, and it's not starting to make some sense, but it will. Okay, so I needed the dark there. I also need to make some transitions here. Like right there is a little bit darker. Now I'm going into a second statement mode, because we've got maybe a couple minutes to kind of tidy this up. And in this fold, it's a little darker here. Now you notice I'm not putting black to make it dark. I'm simply adding some of the opposite color on the color wheel and some of the color that we've already had, so it's not tonal. That needs to be lighter up here. Get rid of this white. Ooh, I put the same color down. That was an accident. Okay, so what am I going to do about that part? I still need some dark, more dark in there. That's better. Going straight into the violet. Where else is it really dark? Right here. Okay, I know when I'm painting and I can hear the air conditioning in the studio that I'm probably being too quiet. I just got lost in the zone again. And I hope that happens to you when you paint. I hope you totally get lost and hours go by and you just don't even know what's going on. So thanks again for watching Give Your Walls Some Soul. Glad you could be here. I'm Shannon Grissom.